Hey, Brigham with Drift here, and in this video, 6 things I think you should know about the K2 Alchemist. Before I get into the details, check out my specs and my biases below so you know where I'm coming from as a rider. We own all the boards we talk about. We get them in a variety of conditions, especially powder, before we let you know what we think. This one requires a little bit of a story before I get into the details. You may recall, if you've been following the channel, I demoed a 164 wide Alchemist in January at the Interlude demo, Snow Basin, Utah. Conditions were horrible. It was at the end of 2 days of bell-to-bell snowboarding, and I think I said something to the effect that I don't know who this board's for, but it's not for me. It was so stiff that I felt like I couldn't even engage the edge in a turn. And I think in that video I talked about, kind of having the humility to say, not every snowboard is for me. But fast forward to another demo a few weeks later at Brighton, and I actually ended up sharing the lift with Jay Stone, Justin Clark, head engineer for K2 Snowboarding. If you're following along in the snowboard industry, I'm sure you've heard of him, and he's become pretty well known for these boards he's putting out, especially the landscape collection. We ended up being able to share a lift, and I got to pick his brain for a little bit. And he said, long story short, you definitely need to get on the 159 wide. I think you'd love it. And help me get on this board, the 159 wide. So there's the background a little bit. I got to admit, I was nobody wants to admit, like, I'm not good enough for that board, and I liked having him tell me, like, no, you'd be fine. You just need to be on the right size. Now, I like to size up often. 164 is not a huge board for me, but in this board, as precision as it is, those size differences are pretty important. And it's interesting, the size chart isn't super helpful. I think the bigger 4 sizes all list the exact same weight range from like 130 pounds to 230 pounds or something like that. Like, it's a huge range, and all 4 of the boards have it. To be honest, this board, and I'll get more into it as I get into the details, but I think I'd still love the footprint of the 164. This feels a tiny bit small to me, a little bit narrow for what I like to ride and how I like to ride. But this has been absolutely fine. It's just, I like a little bit of a bigger reference stance, maybe a little more width, maybe a little more love in the deep powder. But this has been good. Do I need this board? Probably not all of the time, but some of the time, absolutely I want it. So here are the 6 things. The first thing is, this is not cheap, but this is a premium board with everything thrown at it that you can come up with. And I'm one to be pretty skeptical of the little tech doodads and stuff that are added, but I'm not ever going to dismiss those completely. Like, if they work, they work. So, the space glass, the carbon spectral braiding, the core that has some of the grains running at 30 degrees to, the length of the board, all of that stuff. I actually think those are having a legit effect, and a company like K2 has the resources to source and R&D and put together something that can actually use those things to good effect. So as I talk about it, some of those things will come up, I think, in how this board feels. One of the things I really love, it's a simple thing, but this top sheet, which is hydrophobic, I love it. I wish every snowboard had a top sheet like this. It hides blemishes, the snow doesn't stick to it, it feels very durable. I love that. It's a small thing, but that, I hate it when the snow gathers and sticks to my board. Just that kind of stuff. Like, you're going to spend the money, but every little detail that can be put into a board pretty much is put into this board and at your disposal. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, coming with that premium board, this is unashamedly for the advanced to expert rider. And it's not just about spending a bunch of money. It's also about getting a precision piece of equipment. And this might call your name, and I would just say you need to be honest with yourself about whether or not you need it. If you are a skilled rider and you like to free ride and push it as hard as you can in a variety of conditions, then absolutely, this is something you should check out. I actually think you could ride this fairly casually, but it just wouldn't be the choice for that. It is stiff. It's probably the stiffest board, even in the 159. I think this is the stiffest board I've been on this year. Overall, it feels pretty similar to my Amplid Safari, but it is stiffer than that. It just, again, the word precision comes to mind a lot. It feels like a scalpel, like a supercar to me, and it demands, you know, that kind of riding. And it's not really that it's going to kick you to the curb. It actually doesn't feel that aggressive to me compared to some, but it's just the nature of the board. And I think a big part of it is the flex pattern. It's stiff. So the third thing is that, as I just said, it is stiff, but interestingly, the camber profile is not crazy aggressive. Now it has some rocker in the nose. We'll talk about float in a little bit, and it has a healthy boa camber, but it's not crazy. Like I said, I don't actually think like, oh man, you know, you better be on your A game or this thing's gonna take you down. I might say that the Aviator feels a little bit more aggressive. The Pantera, for sure, it probably has 3 times the camber of this. I mean, I should put that on the camera so you can see it. But that thing has a serious boa camber, and you need to be on your game with it. So super stiff, but the actual feel in the camber profile is more approachable than I thought it would be. The fourth thing that leads to is that, to me, this has a really great balance between liveliness and dampness. Now, a lot is talked about with the dampness of this board, and I'm going to push back against that a little bit. I've ridden a handful of boards, you know, bombing firm snow, top speed, or chunky, chopped up old powder or anything like that. I've ridden a handful of boards this year that I would say handle that stuff better than this. So I'm not going to say it's the dampest thing out there, but with that said, you can absolutely bomb. You will go fast enough that you will suddenly go like, wait a second, I'm going so fast right now. Like, this is that kind of board where you're just flying. Very little chatter from the nose, super impressive that way. So it's stable, it's strong, it's smooth, but I'm not going to say it's the most stable in those situations. It actually, to me, can get a little bit squirrely at the limit. But again, I'm kind of picking hairs there, and I'm putting it up against some pretty aggressive boards like the Pantera. And then coupled with that is that liveliness, where some of those boards just want to hammer through everything. I feel a pretty good amount of pop from this thing, popping off little, you know, powder piles and side hits and cliffs and stuff like that. It's super fun, and I love to ride like that. So I think it's a good balance and a good trade. All right, the fifth thing is that I was surprised at how surfy this is. Now, don't get me wrong, this is no like back foot heavy, you know, surfy cruiser. It's not the Storm Chaser or the special effects, but for, you know, this high-end ultra stiff freeride board, it likes to turn, and it's not hard to turn. I rode it a lot in the trees, and as long as they didn't get too tight, if the trees get tight enough, that flex and the power needed to engage the turns, it can get a little tricky, a little dicey, but in general, I just thought, man, this is something I'd really like to have in fairly tight situations, and also in really steep terrain where you need to swing that back end around quick. I even spent some time, you know, there was like a foot of snow on top of these massive moguls, and I just out of curiosity kind of went in there, and I usually don't touch anything mogulled at all, but just kind of going around and through all those moguls, and I really liked it for that. So that was a cool thing to me. It's pretty turny for what it is. For example, I'd say it's more turny than the flagship. But then if you want to just go straight, go for it. And then number 6, you know, my favorite thing, the float. I was continually impressed by how good the float was for the size and for the amount of camber. There is some rocker. There's not a ton. There's a little bit of taper. Got a little bit of width here. But I was just like, yeah, this holds up pretty well. If it's deep enough or low enough angle, it is going to get overwhelmed. This is not going to be my top pick for like the deepest day in the backcountry or in the resort. But I don't know, 5 to 8 inches of fresh snow, absolutely. In the resort, the day after the powder day, 100%, like, this is the board, let's go. And you can just charge everything like it was still a powder day, almost. What overall kept coming to mind again for me with this, that precision, that kind of supercar feel, this is a board that I don't think I'm going to reach for it all the time, but it's a board that I 100% see myself grabbing when I don't know what I'm going to get, especially in the backcountry. If I go like, there might be some powder, there might be some ice, there might be some steeps, there might be some really nasty stuff. Like I feel like I could grab this board and just be confident that it's going to do really well and handle whatever I throw at it in those more extreme situations. So for example, last spring I climbed and snowboarded down Mount Shasta a couple times. One time I used the Yes Worka, and that worked really well. And the other time I used the Aviator 2.0, and I also thought that did great as well. But you get some crazy steeps, some really firm snow. Sometimes you're blasting through like old avalanche fields that are really nasty. And then you have these areas of insanely perfect corn snow. And then sometimes it gets too slushy and too soft. And anyway, I just kept thinking like, man, like this is the kind of board that I would want for that situation, where I'm just like, I'm not sure what I'm going to get. I'm going to get a little bit of everything. And this thing will give me the confidence that I can handle all of it. All with the added bonus, which I didn't mention in any of these other points, that this is quite light. I really like carrying it in the backcountry too. So as you can see, there's a lot to talk about with this board. There's a lot of hype about this board. Is it everything everybody says it is? I don't know. Like I said, I'm going to push back a little on the dampness thing. But other than that, like, yeah, this is a special board. If any of that sounds interesting to you, and you're being honest with yourself about what you like to do and what you can do with a snowboard, absolutely check it out. All right, that's the K2 Alchemist. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you think. I'd love your feedback, your experience. I know a lot of you out there have this board. It's definitely a popular one. So let's hear what you think. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.